Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the final session of Dakshin Dialogues by Southwest. We have, as were introduced, very distinguished panel with us to talk about the Southern model of governance. And I must say to the panelists that we also have an equally distinguished audience. As a moderator, my job is to flag some issues on which, of course, the very distinguished panelists who are very experienced in public life, who have been with the government and who have helmed different departments in the government and given some kind of a shape to what probably can be called the Southern model of governance. Let me flag off certain issues. The questions that occurred to me: is there a Southern model of governance at all? Can we say that there is a Southern model of governance? When we talk about a model of governance, does it really emerge automatically, or does it need some kind of a give and take and emulation between the states and governments, irrespective of what political persuasions they are from, what kind of an ideologies they champion or adopt? But I must also caution here both the audience as well as the panelists. When they raise the questions. When we are talking about Southern model of governance, we are not trying to pit this against other regions. It's not Southern model of governance versus Northern model of governance or Western model of governance or East Indian model of governance. It's not that. We are only trying to see, explore, examine what has been the experience, what has been the endeavor, what have been the initiatives in the southern states. So therefore, please let us not try and pit one region against the other, not try to differentiate in that sense. Let us look at the southern states and see how they have addressed the issues that are faced by the 5 southern states, 4 and then 5. How did they look at poverty? How did they look at deprivation? How did they look at education? How did they look at healthcare? How did they look at redistribution? How did they look at wealth generation? How did they look at wealth redistribution? How did they look at social justice? How did they look at technology? How did they look at the emerging technologies? For instance, the so-called fourth industrial revolution, the IT, not just the brick and mortar as in the introductory address Vasu said. It's just not the brick and mortar, but the wealth generating mechanisms have undergone a huge transformation. So how did each of them, or collectively, how did they address these? And out of these, can we try and divine some kind of a Southern model? I will conclude my introductory remarks by saying a few words about South first. As I said this to many times to Vasu. South First is a very evocative title, very punchy. I often wonder, if Dr. Thiagarajan, if there is a newspaper in Madurai or my native place, Narasapuram, it's called local media. It's a Mufassil media. If it is in Chennai or in Bangalore or in Hyderabad, it's called state media, local. If it is in Delhi, it's national media. If the office of a particular media outlet is located in Washington or in New York or in London, it's called international media. Therefore, but you see, if you look at it, all these are really local media outlets. Sometime back, Rajini Garu, I had seen all the so-called what we call national channels. They were giving live telecast of Delhi Assembly. Delhi Assembly. It's a state government, state assembly, but because it's located in Delhi, the so-called national channels are giving live of Delhi Assembly, and the entire nation is subjected, or is what do I say? Is more or less forced to see what is happening in Delhi Assembly. So this is the kind of media imagination that we have in our mind. Just because it is in Hyderabad, it is in Bangalore, it is in Chennai, it doesn't become a local media or a state media. In that sense, although the focus of South First is primarily or predominantly the 5 southern states, which are generally in the media's imagination in India are not as prominent as they ought to be. I always feel that, this is an excellent kind of a platform which focuses on the region, which long ago, South Indian history, South Indian, what happened in South India, the empires in South India, the history of South India, as Vasu said, Rajas and Maharajas of South India, the movements in South India, the social reform movements in South India, did not receive the kind of attention, the kind of scrutiny that the other narratives have received. Similarly, the kind of governance models that are emerging from South India also need to be thought about, scrutinized, examined, and if possible, emulated. So with these few words, I would like, shall we start with you, Dr. Thiagarajan? In your mind, this question, of course, I would, the first question go to everybody, each one of them, one after the other. I'll come to Srimati Rajini after Dr. Thiagarajan, and then Sri Gundu Rao, and then, of course, Sri Ashwath Narayan. In your mind, is there a southern model of governance? Can there be a southern model of governance? And if so, what are its distinguishing features?
I think it's a very good question. I think as you were talking, I was just trying to justify in my mind whether there is such a thing. And I'll basically only make 4 brief points. I think the results of development, of progress, of equity in South India, the 5 southern states, are substantively different than the national average or than other parts of the country. Something must be in common to us and relatively different from others. So there must be something that's different. Now the question is, what is that? Governance doesn't fall from the sky. Whatever the society, the culture reflects in the kinds of politicians that are elected, get the majority, form the government, pass the laws, allocate the funds, and create the model of governance. So if there is an outcome that is reflective of a different approach in governance, it probably starts with a different nature of our society collectively across all of us. Then the question is, can you really have a commonality of the society between all of the 5 states? And I suppose partially genetics and the kind of divide of, you know, the Indus Valley civilizations moving down and the Dravidian aspect of it could be, partially the languages all descending from a common core could be, partially the fluidity of the kingdoms through the ages. For example, large parts of Tamil Nadu were run by the Nayaks of the Vijayanagaram Rayars. So there's already that commonality. But if I had to pick one point that I would say really should establish that commonality, it is in the days of the Madras presidency, after Dayaki, in the first few years of the Legislative Council and the Justice Party government, or what was then Madras presidency, which stretched from Kanyakumari to past Bangalore to Orissa on this side, excluding the princely states, this notion of social justice, equality for women in education, in access, and a participative and inclusive society and economy probably is at the core of what we have been able to achieve even 100 years later. As Singapore's founder, the late Lee Kuan Yew said, if you get the engineering of society right, you get development and the economy and all the other things right. And I would say, just to close that circle, it must be in the way that we have approached the participation of all segments of society and enabled everybody to have some access, mainly through education and educational opportunities, but also through things like reservations and through allocation of funds to the bottom of the pyramid to health, those kinds of things. That would be my initial take on it.
So you feel that there can be some kind of a similarity, and there can be a broad southern model of governance. Mrs. Rajini, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. So likewise, Doctor said in regards to the South model governance, what I personally feel is like every state has got its own importance and own culture and traditions and its own priorities. So when we talk about South, likewise, there are a lot of similarities, common festival, common religions, and some common things where we can share and we can represent. So it is important for every government of every state and even in the country level to focus on those kind of commonalities and provide a base where you can leverage those particular needs of those states and especially in the South region. And also all the governments from the government side and also the neighborhood states when we talk about South. Like suppose if you go to any different country, let's imagine we're in United States or somewhere. So how we actually feel when we see an Indian there? We feel like, oh, we are from India, so which part of you? South, North, but still we are all Indians. So that kind of unity. So even the South states has to come up with that kind of unity.
So some kind of an affinity.
Yes. So where we come up and we portray ourselves as a very strong and yes, South also can do things. South also can represent and South has some kind of different potentialities and some kind of holds where they can do whatnot when comparing to different parts.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sri Dinesh Gundu Rao ji.
As far as the South India goes, taking off from what Mr. Thiaga Rajan was saying, there are definitely commonalities to southern states. Basically by being in the same region, by having influences on each other. Historically, there have been many rulers, say from the Karnataka region ruling over Tamil Nadu rulers ruling over Karnataka, Andhra. So there's been that inter-exchange of ideas, and culturally also a lot of similarities and also a lot of variances also. Each state has got its own unique, within our own cultures, there are our own subcultures. So that is there. But if you look at history itself, if you look at, say, if you take a classical language as one index, there are 6 classical languages in this country. That is, with languages which have existed for more than 2,000 years and beyond. In that 6, it's Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, and Malayalam constitute 4 of the 6 classical languages in India. And the other 2, I think, one is Sanskrit and one more language, not Hindi. So that itself shows that we've got our own histories. Each language has got its own history, going back more than 2,000 years ago. So there's a deep influence of that. And if you look at the way we have functioned since independence, after democracy deepened, and we've been having governments, and in the first maybe 10, 20 years, may not have been too much of variance, but if you look at it now, after these more than 70 years plus of governance, there is a certain commonality in what we've been able to achieve. Each state maybe are better in some aspect compared to our within each other, but overall, if you look at our own human development, the way our people in terms of health, education, in terms of our fiscal responsibility, our ability to grow the economy, I think we have been able to do much better than the national average. And we've been able to be more forward-looking in terms of policies, in terms of reforms, in terms of opening up our economies and bringing in new ideas. So there's been we are more open in that way, that we are willing to receive new ideas and adapt them and make our own economies grow. Each state has grown in its own unique way. Karnataka has got its own unique plus points. Andhra, Tamil Nadu, of course, Kerala, of course, they are not represented here, but they've got their own unique, they are considered in terms of human development equivalent to a developed country. So, that has been the commonness that we can see, if you look at it from a macro level, that we've been able to achieve. So that, I think, obviously comes from for some odd reason why that has happened. There has to be a reason for that. And that reason, I think, is one is pride in our own cultures, but at the same time, we are willing to be open to other things and have our minds are more open, more reformist, and more willing to accept, new concepts. So I think that there is a sense that, yes, we can say there is a southern model in that sense, which is actually now the rest of the country looks at and says, why is South India growing faster? Why is South Indian states, better on so many economic indicators? Why is South India doing better on so many human indicators? So that debate is already there. So I think we can say that there is a broad concept of a southern model of development.
Thank you, sir. Ashwath ji.
Good afternoon to all the invitees. As the title says, South First. Probably bringing the southern states together on one platform is a very good initiative. Probably for all the good reasons, southern states have been a very promising states for all the historical reasons. Even from the history, if you look at, we had all progressive rulers. For them, It was the people-centric, society-centric. So all the good work, whatever they have done in the past, has led to the lot of development. Today, whatever we are reaping dividends, it's all because of the good work being done in the past by the various rulers. And even in the present, we are trying to catch up, be more progressive society, be more open, be more of people-centric, and even for the strategical reason also, we are not much affected because of the more of the invaders also. In the southern state, we never faced that kind of challenges. Probably people are given topmost priority. Even in my state, because southern state, the Mysore dynasty, they have done fantastically well, and whatever good work they have done, still we are able to reap it. So further forward, in the globalized world, we don't have any physical boundaries now. Though we have a boundaries, but because of the technology, we will not be having any boundaries. We'll be working very closely. It is all about the quality, how best we can perform. It's only the performance of each and every individual and the government matters. So probably in this direction, we need to work more closely, come out of the differences. So working, collaborating, respecting each other, working with mutual respect can make a huge difference. Probably we need to go forward and do better. And that will really strengthen these kind of initiatives, can bring us more together. There are many good works. There are many good works, a good initiative in southern states which have been picked up, and we have done extremely well. There are many good examples. So I really appreciate all the audience and the invitees who have come here for a good cause. I wish them all the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, I mean, what I gather is that roughly there is an agreement that there is a southern model of governance. There could be a southern model of governance. And, the affinities among the southern states, historically, culturally, in terms of the dynasties, the rulers, and, what do you call the princely states, or the British earlier company and then the British crown and administered areas, and the kind of reforms that were initiated under several regimes. What kind of progressive measures they were taken. That is the historical background. But today, we're not talking only about the economic models, economic model of South, but we're broadly talking about the model of governance, and try to see if we can identify the distinguishing features of the southern model of governance. It may be very unwieldy to broadly say there is a southern model of governance. It could be very general, it could be even vague. But let's break it down into different parts. Let us see how certain issues are addressed by the governments in different states of South India. For instance, can I ask you, Madam Rajini, what kind of initiatives or what kind of perspectives with which your government or Andhra Pradesh or your neighboring state, or to your knowledge, the other states in South India, what kind of a perspective with which governance is guided? And what kind of a perspective guides the governance in terms of health, education, and other basic human development indices?
Certainly, sir. When it comes to the government of Andhra Pradesh, we have set up a benchmark in doing good governance in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Under the dynamic leadership of our Honorable Chief Minister, Sri Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy Garu, we've been the pioneer in welfareism, in delivering all the welfare schemes to the people of this state. When I talk about welfare schemes, I wanted to mention on this national platform about the welfare schemes implemented in the state of Andhra Pradesh, the 9 gems of the state, which is our manifesto and which we proudly call as Navaratnalu. In me, being the Minister for Health and the Women Minister, I'm happy to share you that 90% of our schemes in our Navaratnalu are women-centric schemes. So these schemes are transforming the life of the people in our state. When we talk about these initiatives like health, education, agriculture, these all stand as a very important priority to my government. So let me take you to all the few schemes what our government is implementing in our state. So, in regards to education, Jagananna Ammavadi. So this scheme basically represents the importance of education and the importance given to every mother in the state by providing financial assistance of rupees 15,000 per annum for their children education. With this, more than 45 lakhs mothers are being benefited under this scheme. So which in turn helps every mother to make their child educated out of her hardships. So with this scheme, we have witnessed that there is a lot of growth in the literacy rate, and the dropouts has drastically reduced, and the pass percentage in government schools has increased. And also we have seen many other upliftments along with this. So in addition to this, we also have Jagananna Vidya Kanuka, which is helping the students to get their uniforms, shoes, etc. And also like textbooks, dictionaries and all for their regular things and to attain a good education. And also we are providing Jagananna Goru Mudda, which in turn is helping for a very good nutritious meal, a midday meal. And also we have fixed a menu for their well-being. In addition to this is up to the intermediate education what Ammavadi is supporting. And for technical education, we have Jagananna Vidya Divana and also Vasati Divana, which in turn is supporting for reimbursing the full tuition fee is paid by the government, and also the yearly hostel expenditure is paid by the government. So all these aspects are helping every mom and also the children that the education, their costly education is bared by the government, and it's the government's responsibility. The government has taken the responsibility to encourage them in their education.
So which means that in your mind, welfare is one of the distinguishing features of the governance model.
Yes.
Dr. Thiaga.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a governance model is only reflective of a society. I think what distinguishes us in the South is that our model is very much driven on inclusion, access, and investment in the future. So investment in women, investment in children, access for everybody.
Investment in human resources.
In human resources. And education being by far the best investment that you can make. I echo the former minister's comment that we are in a global economy. At the end of the day, it is going to be the per capita productivity that will determine our growth rate, our competitiveness. And surely education skilling is key. Of course, you have to start with nutrition, you have to start with maternal health, you have to start with reducing infant mortality, malnutrition, stunting. But once you get past that, really it's about education and progress. And as I say everywhere, you can't have a future without children, and you can't have children without women. So you have to start first investing in women, then children, then education at higher levels of skill. And I think that is common to all of us. And as I say, I think it's been common for a long time, including the notion of reservations, which was first introduced in 1921 under Diaki, under the communal GO, which said that jobs should be reserved in the percentages of the community in the population. This was now more than 100 years ago. So I think these kinds of measures have created forerunners, mentors for every region, every community, eventually every village, to have somebody who can help draw them, guide them into participation at the full level of the economy. And if welfare is a part of that, absolutely that kind of welfare in terms of support to the bottom of the pyramid and equalizing payments, which at the, this kind of redistribution is at the core of democracy to make sure the bottom and the top don't get too far away from each other.